guys, Ken here, your thrifty apprentice. Welcome back to the channel's version of a crafty corner. Happy Sunday, everyone. It is World Watercolor Month, 31 straight days of continuous watercolor painting. For whatever that is to you and however you choose to participate. If you don't know what World Watercolor Month is, it was started or it is a part of and curated by the Doodle Wash website. Angela Fair, creator and prompt creator, puts forth 31 days of prompts for you to use your watercolor abilities, no matter your skill set or your level, to enjoy and have fun painting and delving into the world of watercolor. And for that very reason, we have a twofer today. We are going to be having a crafty journal creation specifically for World Watercolor Month. And we're going to be painting Days 1 Prompt Sunlit. So let's get into it. First, I use water-soluble products to create my very own custom pattern paper that will be used for the covering on the front and the back of the journal. So starting off, we are jumping into making the cover here. I'm using a piece of 9x12 Master's Touch Fine Art Studio smooth Bristol board as the base. I am using the Miya 36 sided watercolors. I'm just using like the cerulean blue color out of this set in order to lay down the base color for the entire pattern paper. And then I'm going to be using some stencils and some water-based dye ink in order to stencil in some designs onto that dried watercolor. First, I used butterflies with sort of a lighter blue ink, just a little bit darker than the base, not quite navy blue. Then I went in with a bluish green. And here I'm actually using a stencil that I got from Temu. I ordered a lot of Temu stencils for crafting, and they were really, really cheap and economical, and they really come in handy. I've been using them for pattern paper making, for coffee staining, for tea staining, and they were like less than $1.50 a piece. I ordered a lot of them. So you're going to see quite a few Temu stencils. This particular dot stencil that I'm using to put on the darker blue shade here is one that I've had for quite a while, which is why you see the acrylic paint on it. And now I'm going to grab another Temu stencil, and I'm stenciling on the focal image per se for the pattern paper. These are dandelions. I love them, and I was just kind of turning the stencil this way and that way in order to kind of get them lined up across the bottom the way that I want it. And of course you see that I am stenciling these in with black ink. Now this is actually Rangers, Tim Holtz Rangers archival, so this ink actually is not reactivatable with water, but it doesn't matter. You can use a combination of all different ones. Now I'm going to move on to actually stamping butterflies into the background. Now it was never my intentions to actually go the butterfly route, although it seems to be a fail-safe for mine. I'll go to butterflies. I like them, I love them. They look really, really pretty on a lot of different things, and I thought they would be really cute for this art journal. So I'm using a pig stamp that I have, and I am just stamping this butterfly all over in both green and black ink. Now this is a lined stamp, and I thought it would be really great to be able to see the color through it instead of having a silkwood stamp, which would be one solid color when I stamped it. Now here I am pulling some more of that blue paint off of the Miya paint set, and I'm mixing it with Master's Touch Fine Art Studio metallic watercolors in order to give the background a little bit more pizzazz and to paint in those butterflies that I stamped in that black ink that won't run. Next, I'll create the base of the journal from a file folder. As I looked around for something to create the base with, I finally settled on file folders since I had quite a few of them. Now, we all know that file folders actually have three little grooves behind the actual fold. So I just counted over 2 grooves and scored in order to make the spine for my journal. Once I had all of that creased and made sure that it was even, it was going to sit the way that I wanted to, I grabbed the papers that I was making for signatures. As you can see, those are actually watercolor cards by Master Touch Fine Art Studio. So I just stack those cards inside one another, and I'm going to actually use those as the pages for my journal because they're already watercolor paper and you can paint on all sides of it. Thought that was really cool. Wouldn't have to cut anything. So I put those inside the folder in order to measure where I needed to cut the paper based on the length. I grabbed a ruler after making the mark and just made a line straight across because I want to make sure that this cut is as even as possible. I'll grab my cutter, I'll line it up, and then I'll cut. Now, you want to make sure that it's laying down flush against your cutter when you cut, or if you use scissors, try to stay as straight as you can. Now, after I got the height worked out, I needed to work out the width. I put the signature back inside, and once again, taking my pen, I just measured about where I wanted the folder to end. Now, I was not going to be cutting any of the cards because I didn't want to lose any of the real estate to paint on. So I made sure to make this cover big enough to cover all of the papers that I was inserting inside the journal, keeping in mind that I was not going to be trimming the signature at all. Now, once I measured out the front and the back and got everything cut evenly, next I needed to go in and reinforce the spine. Now, there you see a old pad of Strathmore mixed media paper that I had already used up, and I saved all of those backings in order to use in my journal creation. They mainly turn out to be covers, but in this case, I really needed something thick in order to reinforce that spine. So I measured it and then I cut it down in order to fit just inside the spine to make sure that both my front and back cover would still close. And then I just cut that down. Now I am going to use some scissors just to trim everything up, make it neat, although it'll be covered. I still have this thing about keeping everything as professional or as good as I possibly can. And I'm going to glue down this reinforcement. I'm using glue stick. I'm using a little PVA glue. And just for a little added security, I did throw just a tiny strip of fabric fix in there just as well. And then I went ahead, glued that reinforcement down, and just made sure that everything worked properly. Now what I want to do is measure what I'm going to cover the inside of the journal with. I have this muslin that I dyed with black watercolor and some black metallic watercolor, and I've had it in backstock for a minute. I figured this would be perfect for this particular journal creation, so I'm just going to cut it down enough to measure what I need, and then we'll move on with the journal. Now we'll create the inside of the journal. The binding strip and the button out of these items. So using this dyed muslin or calico, I think that's what it's called in other countries, that I dyed with black watercolor and black metallic watercolors. I'm just going to be using that to create the inside of the journal. Now I have a stamp set here that I'm going to be stamping butterflies with, since I knew that motif would match the front of the journal. And I'm going to be using Inktense pencils. Now Inktense pencils are a wonderful water-based product that once they dry 9.999 times out of 10, they will not reactivate and they will not move. This makes them a wonderful product for applications in a lot of different aspects. In this particular case, I'm going to be using the black for the wide wing spread butterfly, and then I'm going to be using a dark green for the silhouette butterfly. Now this particular section of the video is going to kind of cut in and out because I didn't want to put you through the pain of watching me stamp each and every one of these. But at this point, you'll see that we have been using nothing but water soluble things in order to create our project today, keeping in line with World Watercolor Month. And we will be getting into that watercolor painting just a little later on. So we're going to finish up the stamping for the inside. And here I'm just using that green now to color in the profile butterfly to get it set up. I'm sorry, to get it stamped down. Just to give the inside cover a little bit more diversity and to break it from all of the black butterflies. Now, I'm not going to be using metallic watercolor on the inside to color these like I did on the outside cover. So I did want to add just one additional color to the mix just to make it look a little bit more lively. And then we're going to move into actually assembling the journal. Now it's time to assemble this journal. So at this point, we are at the part of the video that most journal makers are already familiar with. We're actually assembling the journal, and you can use whatever method you normally use to assemble your journals, but just in case, I threw down some fabric fix in the middle on the inside cover, got it squared up in the middle of the fabric that I created. Speaking of, keep in mind that we created everything for this journal today custom from scratch using our own art-based mediums. We did not use any digi kits, digi prints, printables, pattern papers, ephemera, none of that. Everything was made by scratch, and I think that that is wonderful considering the fact that we made a watercolor journal with watercolor pages for World Watercolor Month. I was just so excited about this. Now, I use Fabric Fix and glue stick, and I'm actually using Scott's Create glue, which is more like a gel or a cement type of glue. It holds pretty much everything, and I think it's probably the best glue stick on the market. And when I use it in combination with Fabric Fix, I think it holds super, super well. So I put down thin layers of that to make sure that I covered the inside. I flip it over, wrap the corners with just Fabric Fix. And now you see me using Fabric Fix and the glue stick to go ahead and glue down those sides. I'm being sure to add, or should I say tug a little bit on the fabric just to make sure that I'm pulling it tight. That's going to help to eliminate any of the extra wrinkles that would have been on the inside of the cover. Now you see me just kind of playing around here with the fabric because I wanted to get it to lay down as smooth, as flat, as even as possible. Whenever I wrap the inside of my journal covers with fabric and wrap the ends to the front, which will then be covered with something, I always make sure to get it as flat as possible because I want to eliminate as much bulk as I possibly can. But I did know that adding this fabric was going to help to make this file folder very sturdy and help tear resistance. So here you will see the pattern paper. I scanned it into my computer as I do with most of my pattern papers so that I don't have to use the original. And then I printed that out onto Nina cardstock in the size that I needed. And I put the original in the file folder that I keep all of my other original custom made papers in so that whenever I want to, I can always grab them and either copy them or just print them directly from the scanned file that I put in the computer when I originally finished each of those projects. That way I can use my custom creations over and over and over on any type of paper that I choose. Normally sticker paper, but here, like I said, I use that Miya classic cardstock. Now you can see that the coloration on the printout is different from the one that I created. It's a little darker and more saturated with the blues. That's simply because I did adjust the color before printing, and that's another great thing about creating your own custom papers and then scanning them in to print from later. You can adjust the colors, the hues, all those different things and still be really confident and comfortable with what you're doing because it's all being done from something you created from hand. Now here, after I put down all of that glue, you will see that I'm using a brayer. That brayer helps to get a surface super flat. And once that dried, I just cut it down so that I would have it all the same size. Now here I actually cut out another strip of that calico and I stamped it with a wording stamp. I forget what it says, but it's being used to cover the outside spine. And I'm just going to hit both the fabric and the cover itself with glue, Fabric Fix, and that Scott Create glue, just to make sure that I got some extra bond and extra hold. And then I'm going to get that strip centered up on the bind. I'm sorry, on the spine. Until I got it just the way I want it. I'm going to brayer it down, and then I will actually flip it over and cut off the excess. And that's going to bring us to getting everything covered on the journal. Now it was time to start thinking about what I wanted to do with the edges. At first I thought about sewing, but then I decided I would just do some inking, since I know that there could be some people watching this video who doesn't have a sewing machine. Next, I moved on to making the closure and putting my book plate. Now for the book plate, I just chose a regular sentiment that says "My Treasures," which I cut out on some black cardstock with my brother's scan and cut. The closure itself was an idea that I picked up from Natasha at Treasure Books. It's like a button that allows you to wrap a closure inside it, so that you don't have to come up with something else. Now that's attached with a brad that I did put through the cover. Had I planned better, I would have actually attached that before I wrapped the inside of the journal, but hey, what can you do? I think it still turned out, worked well, and it looks really good. Now I'm just going to get that closed. I'm going to add some beads onto the end of the string for a little bit more pizzazz. Those are crackle stone, and I think those crackle stone beads laid down beautifully against those dandelion black stencils. I'm just going to tie that off to make sure that the beads don't come off, and then I'll cut it to make sure that it's even. Now it's time to throw some Fabric Fix on the back of the sentiment, or the quote-unquote bookmark, and then I'm just going to get that down and centered just to make sure that everything evens up. Now it's time to go ahead and just throw in that signature. They were already put together because they were pre-cut cards. Now this is a no binding, or should I say a no sewing binding. I'm just going to wrap that string around the spine, tie it on the inside to have removable pages. Now for part 2 of this video. That's right, you're getting a double whammy of Ken. We are doing World Watercolor Month Day 1 prompt. This video is premiering on Sunday, so you guys will be joining me then. But for me, I am creating this content on Saturday, so I will be following Day 1's prompt for World Watercolor Month. The 2023 World Watercolor Day 1 prompt. Sunlit. Now that all those dramatics are out the way, let me tell you guys how I do this. What I tend to do is print the World Watercolor Month for the current year and for the previous 3 years. Now, I do that for a couple of reasons. There are no rules that says you have to follow the prompts exactly day for day. Maybe you feel like painting something else for some reason or for somehow. The point is to get you painting, to get you practicing, to get you used to using watercolor. That is the whole point of this entire exercise. And for that, I love it. And I'm going to try my very best to make sure that I hit all 31 amazing days of this extravaganza. So if I should pass a day that I'm not feeling too much, I will search that day in one of the previous years to see if maybe that is lifting my spirits a little more. And if so, that's what I paint. But in this case, Day 1 was perfect. We are going to jump into doing a sunlit painting right here, right now. Day 1's prompt, sunlit. In all honesty, guys, sunlit was actually a pretty easy prompt for me, being a landscape artist, or an aspiring landscape artist, let me say it like that, who likes to use all these different types of media. When I saw the word sunlit, I immediately thought of a sunlight landscape. So that's exactly what I'm painting. I went on Unsplash and found a reference photo, which is viewable in the video so that you guys can see it. This is Camps Bay, Cape Town, South Africa. And this reference photo is by Cece's Travel. I thought it was a absolutely gorgeous photo that showed the sunlight. Now, of course, you guys know that when you use a reference photo, you want to use it as a reference and not, try to imitate it, else you just use the picture, right? So I chose to elect using what to put in the picture and what not to. So I did omit the people that were on the beach, and I did omit the sidewalk. I did want to keep it all landscape, so to speak. Now I am painting, of course, on those Master's Touch pages, or those Master's Touch Ready Cut watercolor greeting cards that I'm using as the signatures for the art journal that we made in this video. I'm painting with Art Whale. Now, Art Whale is a wonderful watercolor paint. The only drawback is that they crack. And of course, every time I use them, I say the same thing. You can offset that by putting glycerin or honey into the paint when you first pan them out of the tube and allow them to dry down. That's going to prevent the cracking. I grab this palette a lot. I really like these paints. And I also like the fact that I pan them into full pans. So I really like those large pans. I do paint with some pretty large size brushes. In most cases, in the case for World Watercolor Month, because these are only 5x7 cards, I won't need really large brushes, but I still like really large pans. So that's where we are. Now I threw, let's see here, cobalt blue and ultramarine, well, cobalt blue in the background, really watered down, brought it all the way down to the horizon, and then I used the convenience orange that was in the set in order to put that glow. I used this same cobalt and some ultramarine in the water, and I brought that all the way forward to the land. Now what you see in the foreground is going to be sap green and Hooker's green deep for the darker tone in the grass under the tree. And that's just a little burnt sienna and burnt umber to create the land going out to the side. For the sand, I used yellow ochre, burnt sienna, little burnt umber, got it really watery, sprinkled salt in it so that it would give me some texture. I used burnt sienna, yellow ochre, the orange color, and then I'm going to eventually use a black that I make in order to do the little rock land. I wasn't sure if they were rocks or if that was actually a hill. Now, as I looked closer into the reference photo after I finished this painting, I realized it was a boulder, so I'm glad I went in the direction that I did. And then, of course, the the palm tree in the front. This is actually one of my first palm trees, and I'm not going to say I don't think it turned out too bad. I think I did pretty well on it. Could do much better. I'm going to practice more of them, but that was pretty fun to paint, getting all those leaves on there. And just trying to make sure that I get some darks in here. I mix my ultramarine and my burnt sienna to get the dark, and I'm just going in and adding shadows into the picture at this point, just because I wanted to make sure that all of the colors I put in there. I love the oranges. I love the way it gave glow. I made sure to grab that orange and drop it into the palm fronds. Is that what you call them? The leaves of the palm? Yeah. So, and then I'm just going in with that dark color, putting in darks, throwing in birds because I cannot have a landscape without birds. Sue me. I'm going to sign it. And then I'm using a Manta scraper to scrape out my highlights. Can you believe it? I did not use a gel pen or bleed proof. I actually used the white of the paper. Now here I'm just going to, put in the cracks and crevices of my little rocks and then make sure that all of my shadows are right, Here, same border goes on with the black to make sure it accents the white border. And that's pretty much going to wrap up. Take off the tape, pull it, or heat it. And that's that. Okay, friends, there you have it. An entire watercolor video extravaganza. No, but seriously, there we created everything using water soluble products, covers, insides. I mean, you know, the first day of World Watercolor Month, I had so much fun putting this video together and creating it. Hoping you guys did too. One more quick look at the journal that we created today. And this is big enough and has enough pages to hold all 31 days of painting. And of course, I have completed day one, Sunlit already, which we did together. Hopefully you guys are doing this. Hopefully you guys are following along with World Watercolor Month. Hopefully you are giving these prompts a try. I hope you grabbed your paints. If not, this is a video. You can always rewind it and go back and do it again. Hey, yo, by the way, for those people who be saying the video moves too fast, I get it. I promise I do. There are a gear. It's at the bottom of your player. You can hit it and control the speed. You can slow it on down if you need to. Or you can watch it 2 or 3 times. Hey, I don't mind. Neither does the algorithm. Appreciate you. But anyway, no, seriously, guys. Here we are. Thank you so very much for joining me. Hopefully you learned some tips, tricks, techniques, whatever suits your fancy. Just had fun, painted along, created along. If you did, please give this video a thumbs up. It's gonna help the channel and algorithm, and it's gonna just show that you like the video. Don't forget to share. Sharing is caring, and maybe someone out there would love to see how to create this journal or even be introduced to World Watercolor Month. Hit us up on all of the social media sites, and don't forget about the link for the Thrifty Apprentice sponsored Facebook group, Paints, Pencils, Pastels, and Markers. It is in the video description, along with the most recommended product list, as well as a link to the Etsy shop in case you decide to support the channel. Thanks, love you if you do. You're still welcome if you don't. None of that matters. All that matters is that you paint, and I encourage you wholeheartedly. Participate in World Watercolor Month. Use whatever medium you want. Watercolor, watercolor pencils, watercolor crayons, water-soluble inks, water-soluble dyes. As long as it's water-soluble, it's watercolor, and you're painting, that's all that matters. All right, guys. See you next time. And remember, as I tell you at the end of every single video, just keep painting and crafting.